radical. When I came up with the word radical, some people told me, yeah, but, isn't it, like, it's a bit, yeah, it is. It's radical. That's the purpose. That's the intent. So what is radical? Radical, especially the last statement, it's a radical overhaul of the existing framework. So we've been told for 10 or 15 years, this is how you're supposed to do your job if you want to succeed. And yet, after 10 or 15 years, there are many things that we still don't control. We still don't manage appropriately. So maybe it's about time that we think about something else. How can we do things differently, right? So I came up with 8 premises. And maybe there could be more. But I started with 8 premises for radical analytics. So we're going to go into each of those aspects, right? We're going to talk just a little bit, because there's so many things to say about those points. So, digital analytics is dead. First premise. Let's put us into the mindset that, do we agree, web analytics is that's passé, it's old. We've moved on to digital analytics. Much better, because we realize that what we do is not about a website, it's about the digital ecosystem. And that includes all of our touch point on the digital channel. But guess what? We're also looking at online behavior and offline impact. We're also looking at the web analytics data we have and trying to merge it with CRM and sales, for example. Right? So the fact that it's digital really doesn't matter. So it's almost like, there's this hype cycle, and we were really at the top for a while. And we were promised so many things. And at least for me, when I talk to agencies, clients, and you, what we see is that we're pretty much kind of getting at the bottom of the disillusionment of what we're doing. But it's going to get better. We just need to figure out how we're going to do it. Right? So we had 42 different answers for how to define good KPIs. There's, I don't know how many people in the room, but if I was to ask you how you would define analytics, we would probably get a ton of different answers. Right? So simply put, it's the science of analysis. Great! What is analysis? It's how we break something complex into small parts so that we can understand, and if we understand how it works, then we can measure and we can optimize. If we don't understand how it works, there's no way we're going to be able to optimize. So that's why all of those articles, the top 10 KPIs for this and the magic recipe to do that, that's BS. It's your own environment, your own context, your own expertise. So now we can define what is analytics. It's how we find ways to balance what would be the best solution versus what are the constraints of the organization. And this might be financial, it might be resources, it might be internal politics, it might be regulation and ethics, whatever the reason. But how many of you have ever felt that you make recommendations and it doesn't go anywhere, right? Of course. And why is that? If the recommendation was able to balance the optimal solution, knowing what are the constraints, there would be absolutely no reason not to do it. So the reason we make recommendations that don't go anywhere is because we are a little bit too much on the optimal side of things, but we don't know all the realistic aspects that are the constraints. Right? And the important aspect is decisions. We need to make decisions. If an organization is not willing to challenge itself and make changes, don't do analytics. It's not useful. And it's just informed by data. The term data-driven doesn't make sense. It's data-informed. So we get informed by the data, but we as human beings make the decision. even when we delegate that decision to machine learning and so on, we made a conscious choice to say, okay, there's a good system to do it. I'm delegating it to machine learning or AI or whatever. Okay, second one, eat your own dog food. Anybody knows what it means? Essentially, do what you preach. So we go to the organization and we try to convince them to do something, to optimize. But are we able to optimize our own job? Right? Think back about what is analysis. Our job is hard? Well, I bet you the whole organization is much more complex than your own job. And we try to optimize the organization. Can we try to optimize our own job? So there's always this, anyone who has done project management knows there's this triple constraint model. So oftentimes analysts are swamped by too much work, too many requests. So how can we solve that? You know, more work means the scope is greater. If you increase the scope, there's only two solutions. Additional cost, which oftentimes means more resources, or you need more time. Or you balance the scope and you reduce the amount of work. There's no way around it. So you can complain all you want. The only time that you're going to be able to get control over your job, if you have too much work, is by addressing one of those points. There is no way around it. So we try to optimize the business, and we don't optimize our own job. That tells me something. Never, ever complain about your job. Running around the business and saying, oh, my job is so hard, nobody understands what I'm doing, I need more resources, you lose all credibility. Why, as a business owner, for example, why would I trust you to optimize what I'm doing if you keep complaining that you can't optimize your own job? No, doesn't make sense, right? So we need to be radical about that. Never, ever complain about your job. Next, embrace agile or die. Most likely, the website that you're analyzing was built using agile development concepts. Do we know what is agile development? Not coding, but what are the concepts? Do we understand how they work? And maybe we should embrace the way they work, because it's much more efficient than a waterfall approach that would say, oh, let's gather the requirements for tracking. Oh no, wait, before that, we need to do stakeholder interviews. Yeah, that's gonna last, a long time. Oh yeah, we need to turn that into a super big document for the requirements. And then we need a measurement plan. Oh yeah, and we need to do the spec for the integration. Yes, and we need to do the tagging. And oh yeah, but we also need to do tests, and then we hope for the best, right? That doesn't make sense to work this way. Why don't we have a more agile approach? Like, over time, what I realized is that all the clients I work with, they end up having the same patterns online. I bet you, if there's a big banner, like a promotional item on the homepage, I think you're going to want to track it, right? If there's a newsletter subscription on the site, pretty sure you're going to want to track it. Oh, look at that, it's an e-commerce website, they have a checkout. Oh yeah, I think, yeah, we should track that. Why do I have to ask the client or my business stakeholder? Just do it. You don't have to ask. You're the expert. They don't have a clue. Or maybe they have a clue, but we'll see what is the impact of that. So, embrace agile or die. Super simple. Think in terms of lean startup. What is the minimum viable product? What is the minimum amount of work that you can do to satisfy your client, your internal stakeholder, your client, right? Minimum viable, continuous deployment. Don't seek to have a perfect implementation because it won't happen. Every single time that I've done implementation and that we've tried to have like a perfect understanding of the needs and turn that into an implementation plan and all the, the fancy way that it's supposed to be, that we were told, it never worked. We always had to go back to the drawing board and say, oh yeah, the client forgot to tell us that, I heard that just last Friday. An agency did an implementation for an e-commerce website. What the client forgot, and they did all the requirement gathering and all that stuff, what the client forgot to say is that the people who work in the store, they go online to look at the product description and all that stuff, and they add the product to the cart to get all the final price with taxes and delivery if the client wants to have delivery and whatever it might be, right? That's changed all the metrics. Conversion rate, Of course they won't convert. They will turn around to the cash machine and enter the transaction there. So we have to go back to the drawing board. Test and realign. Accountability. Be accountable for what you do. So we were told, oh, we need to define SMART objectives. Screw that. Forget about SMART objectives. And the funny thing is, I'm teaching. So there's always, I call them smart ass. Those students that always try to, find the weakness in the teacher. And they say, yeah, but smart, that's not the way to do it. Now there's smarter objective. Or, smart is supposed to be simple or specific. So they find, okay, oh no, that's not, I don't care. Is it a dumb objective? Because that's another way. Is it a dumb, I don't care. What's important is the thought process that you have to go through that thought process to define a good objective. So I started looking at product thinking. And I thought, well, that's very interesting. It's different from a SMART objective, but it seems to me that it's easier. Because you start with customer first, user first. What is the problem? Who's the target audience? Oh, segmentation, right there, right? What is the job to be done? What is the vision of your organization? What are you trying to accomplish? What is the strategy to get there? And the output is, okay, what is the goal? What are the features that we need in order to achieve satisfaction on the user perspective and our vision? And we just have to fill the blanks. Seems to me it's easier than trying to sit in front of a SMART objective and think, okay, simple. What do I need to put there? Measurable. Okay, well, what's going to be the metric? Okay, try to find different ways of doing it. Never ask, always propose. So I started by saying, when you ask what's your objective, they don't have a clue, don't ask. Suggest something, and that's what Tim talked about. So I won't go in details over, but it's exactly the spirit of doing that. So the problem is, when you ask your stakeholder, what's your objective, what's your KPI, what's your metric, what's your goal, what's your whatever, basically right there, you put yourself in a position where the next time they're going to tell you what to do. Because you just opened the door. You basically said, tell me what I should be doing, instead of telling you why it's important, right? And we keep saying, oh, we need to understand why. But the first thing we do is we ask, tell me, what's in it for you? What's your objective? What's your KPI? And so on. So try to kind of frame the discussion. You are the expert. Maybe you don't know everything about their business, but you should have the ability to engage a conversation and lead the conversation instead of doing this and over time risking becoming that infamous reporting monkey, right? The other problem also is, in the never ask, always propose, is that when we make recommendations, we make typically one recommendation, do this. What's the option? Yes or no? They will do it or most likely they won't, right? So again, it puts us into a situation where, what's the alternative? Can we, what do we preach for our customers? We do A/B testing. Yet, when we make recommendation, we come up with, oh, this is the magic solution, do this. Why don't we apply what we preach? Come up with two alternatives. One that maybe is a little bit more ambitious, a little bit more optimal, because you don't know all the constraints. And the other one, which is maybe make it simpler. Think agile. What is the next small iterative improvement you could do? And have a discussion. Which one is the best? Maybe it's somewhere in between. But at least it's not a yes-no answer, right? Next. Who knows what this stands for? Anyone in my workshop should know. What is it?
Define, measure, analyze,
yes. Define, measure, analyze, improve, control. Yes. We've probably seen a lot of articles from vendors or from agencies saying this is the analytics or analysis process. And then they come up with whatever, right? It's not proven, it's not tested, it's their own recipe. Why? Like, define, measure, analyze, improve, control. Super simple. It's proven. It's a problem-solving approach called Lean Six Sigma. It's been used for at least 20 years. You can find training. You can find free or paid training, up to you. But the goal is to reduce the cost of complexity. Wow, that sounds pretty much like what we're trying to do. Increase velocity. Increase velocity is, I'm going to show you the steps. Increased velocity is reduce the moment between the time you find a problem and the time you solve the problem. If you speed up the circle, you increase velocity. Reduce the time between the moment you see an opportunity and the moment you actually do something about this opportunity. Like Pokemon Go. I had a client that, it took them so long to, and it was in the tourism industry. They could have done something amazing with Pokemon Go, but they were so slow that it was over by the time they decided to do something. But of course they were asking me, oh yeah, what should we do with the iWatch? We were told iWatch, we need to do something with iWatch. Damn, you don't even have a strategy in the first place. Forget about the digital strategy. Figure out what you want to do. Forget about digital. Just figure out what you want to do. So oftentimes what I see is that as analysts, we don't immerse ourselves in the context of the business. Forget about digital. Forget about the metrics. Understand the business. Make it easy to do business with. Think about the customers. So define, measure, analyze, improve, control. I always joke that if you say the magic words 3 times, it's going to kick in, right? And there's even a book for dummies. So there's absolutely no excuse not to learn about that, right? I had this junior analyst coming to me and say, oh, I don't know where to start. How do I get started doing an analysis? I said, well, there's this way. And she said, no, but that's just academic. In real life, it doesn't work. I was like, no, please. So I told her, yeah, well, if you have other suggestions, I'm listening. Obviously, she didn't have any other suggestion. So I said, well, go back to your desk and try it. So for each of those steps, there's a ton of little tools and tricks and well-documented that you can use to make it easier to do your job. You just have to spend an hour or 2 looking into it. Don't seek executive buy-in. We were told, oh, you need to have the buy-in from the CEO in order to be successful. And with all due respect for Tom Davenport, for example, who wrote Competing on Analytics, yeah, if you work with one of those Fortune 500, the buy-in from the CEO is pretty darn important. What about the rest of us? Do we have a seat at the big table? We were told for a long time that Yeah, you're the future you're the future, VP of marketing first, but then the next step is going to be, yeah, you're going to be the CEO of the company because you're analysts. Wow, good luck with that, right? So what about the 99% of us? So when you have executive sponsorship, they tend to work on super big issues. They are driving a big boat. So when they make a decision, yeah, it's going to work, it's going to take a long time, but it's going to be long, costly, and risky. On the other hand, when you go bottom up, you make grassroots efforts, that's where disruptive innovation comes from. Because the people who are actually doing the job, they are the best one to know what needs to be fixed. They are the one who talk to the customers. Small experiments, quick iteration, small incremental victories. Seems a lot easier to me than pretending and trying to, sit at the big table. Charlotte mentioned, when you do sit at the big table, how to do it. And I'm pretty sure a lot of us probably don't have, that confidence and those skills to really talk to senior executives. We might be super good analysts. It doesn't mean we're good at everything, right? So we have to recognize that also. So we need to think about what we manage, control, and influence. If you're a manager, you can allocate resources to do something. You motivate the troop, the team, in order to achieve something. What you control is what you're responsible for doing. Those are the tasks that you have the right tools, you know how to do it, you have the right skill set, you know what is expected, right? And influence is what you have some subject matter expertise. Maybe it's future area for growth. So you're a good analyst to analyze the web data, but you develop some expertise in understanding the business and so on. Maybe one day you're going to analyze sales and CRM. A lot of us are doing that now, right? Analysts are change agents. What's the only difference between an analyst and a manager? In my opinion, there's only one difference. That difference is that analysts are given the privilege of making recommendation, of saying, we should go in this direction. But we don't have any power of decision, typically. Of course, there are exceptions, but typically analysts are there to provide recommendation, but they don't actually make the decision. So I asked an analyst one time, I said, you just made a recommendation. If you were the manager, would you say yes to that? And he said no. I said, well, but that's not a good recommendation. If you're not willing to put your life on the line, no, maybe that's a little too much, but if you're not willing to really vouch for it and say, if I was in your shoes, Mr. Manager, I would say yes to that. Otherwise, it's not a good one. Right? But what's interesting is that over time, we're going to see more managers who have this sensibility or they will be more data savvy. And some of us are going to become the managers. And of course, we're going to have that experience of working with data. So we're going to expect data from our team, right? So this slide is probably one of the most, people often say this is one of the most valuable aspects of the whole thing. We all have different expertise. It's either on the business side of things, either enabling capabilities or analysis. So the way I see it is that on the business side of things, we start with strategy and goals, but we turn that into business requirements and objectives. To people who know how to turn this dream into reality using different technologies, different solutions, they understand what is possible or not using different technologies. It might be someone who understands what is the difference between a Facebook ad and a Twitter-sponsored whatever post or whatever it might be, right? It might be as simple as that. So they understand what is required to make it real. It might be people who understand the information architecture. They know how to use GA. They know how to do tagging. What this does is it supplies the means, the tools, and data to people who have a problem-solving approach. They have an analytical mindset. They are able to synthesize a lot of information and communicate back effectively to the business. Right? All of us in the room, think about it. You have one strong area. You have one area that is probably, okay, I can manage. And the other one, it's like, nah, no, it's not my ballgame, right? And that's fine. So that's why a web analyst alone cannot do all of that. It's impossible. It's too complex. There's just too many things. So we have to find where we want to be, where we are today and where we want to be in the future. I used to be very much on the technical side of things. Over time, I developed some other expertise to try to go in the other directions. Right? Uncover the unknown unknowns. So how do we do that? Pilot project or proof of concept, experiment, call it whatever you like. In some organizations, some of those words are, don't say it. Because they've tried pilot project in the past and it failed and didn't work correctly. So as soon as you come up and you say, oh, let's do a pilot project, they're going to say, no way. But what's the purpose of that? Remember, analysis, break something complex into smaller parts. That's the purpose of a pilot project. Okay? Why do we do it? We want to lower the risk, and we want the right to fail, but we should present it as a right to learn, because we don't know. So, and this applies not only to your clients and so on, but it applies to your own job. I don't know what I don't know. So, as long as I haven't tried it, I don't know what I will uncover by doing it, right? And then, I didn't talk about tools and technology. This was already shown once in one of the presentations. But come on, seriously? Like, if you can't find one of these tools to help you do your job, yeah, we better pack everything and go home. Like, there's so many tools and technologies, it's crazy. It's almost a nightmare. And of course, maybe 20%, 50% of those technologies will disappear in the next couple of years, right? Because things are moving very fast. So I didn't talk about tools and technology because this is not a criteria for success. Regardless of course, the great presentation we had about, big data and the tools and so on, yes. But you won't get there until you solve all the other aspects, right? So, again, 8 premises of radical analytics. You can say, no, this doesn't apply, this doesn't make sense. That's fine, that's fine. The only thing I want you is to think about maybe different ways of addressing the problems that you're trying to solve, right? So, tell me, how does it work for you? Thanks.